Welcome back, YouTube. So in today's video, we're going to do a discussion on whether or not it's still possible for Doge to hit $1. And this has been a very important question, and people were kind of saying that. I guess when people make these comment, they're stating that maybe the bulk of the run is behind us, or it's kind of fizzling out, or they don't think that there's going to be like a peak bull run still, or that we've already peaked, right? And if we're looking at the charts historically, right, and I want to just kind of go over this before we actually start diving into the charts. What we had earlier this year, I'm going to move around. So back in around like February, late February, early March, what we had this earlier this year was an anomaly, right? This is, we had a few things going on. We had not only this cycle run necessarily early, but we also had the coins running pretty much at parallels, right? Because typically we have our market leaders, like whether that be like a Bitcoin, primarily Bitcoin, but you can say like a Bitcoin or Ethereum, kind of set the trend and take off first, and then you'll have altcoins and other meme coins, all that kind of stuff follow suit afterwards, right? But what we saw this year was an anomaly. We saw an early trend. We saw an really aggressive run. You can see evidence of that here, and you couple that with really a triple. You see that this happened all at the same time. The money was just flowing into the markets. So that led to the catalyst of there being a potential of an early run, but possibly fizzling out early, and then not having pretty much having a divergence from the typical like 4-year trend line where we start running Q4 of this year and throughout Q1 of 2025. The projections were, hey, we're going to run earlier this year. It's going to be more aggressive, but it may not be as long, right? And this, when we hit the ceiling here, we did set a new all-time high for Bitcoin, but then for Doge, we're around like 22 cents, and then we haven't been able to break above that. Bitcoin hasn't been able to break above its all-time high to hit expectations. Expectations for Bitcoin are around 100%. Excuse me, 100,000 this cycle. Doge $1 plus have been able to hit those, and so people are saying, okay, well, this is the bull run, right? What we're looking at right here on the chart, the February to I guess March, this run here, they're saying that's the bull run. Bitcoin to like 70K plus, that's the bull run, and then it's over. We'll see you in 4 years, right? We don't have, because of where the cycle is and where and the way the coins are responding, we do not have sufficient evidence of that. Why is that? When we have the typical breakdown of from, let's say, peak bull run, what we normally see, yes, it's coupled with like an aggressive sell-off along with that 4-year trend line. But what we also see is we bottom out around that, typically somewhere between 50 to like 80%, normally on that higher level, depending on the actual coin from the all-time high. And normally what we've had here, and this is the most important thing, is we have not had a divergence from setting a all-time high in every bull run, right? And then even if we have a smaller one for Bitcoin, let's say it doesn't hit like those astronomical numbers or the law of diminishing returns, we have that slowdown. It's saying that, okay, well, Bitcoin did hit an all-time high. What if it just underperforms this cycle? Again, we have to couple that with some evidence here from the overall charts here and the levels that it's maintaining. Now, if we have some levels here, we start seeing Bitcoin unable to maintain some of these higher fib levels, and we see that sell-off, then obviously that's going to be an indication here for the rest of the market. And when people use that to kind of criticize coins like Doge, it's just like saying, hey, when Bitcoin took off, let's just say this was the actual bull run, Doge was not supposed, Doge and other coins too, I'm just using Doge because primarily it's one of the things we talk about in comparison, it's not supposed to run parallel with Bitcoin. We're supposed to see similar price action like this for like a few months, and then we see that gradual ascension. This 9 days, I believe, consecutive higher highs running alongside Bitcoin, again, that is an anomaly here. So When we talk about the projections overall, we say, hey, is this still possible? Are we still on trajectory, on path here to set a new all-time high for Doge and to break into six figures for Bitcoin? I still have to say yes, because we have not diverted from the current, from the historic trend line, right? We're getting into that season, and then obviously we can start adjusting, like predictions, projections based off of what we're seeing in the market. But before I start saying, hey, this is we're past the season, or we've seen the best that this run has to offer, we need to be going through the historic trend lines and trend points and time frames, really, before we start making those projections to try to rule things out. Otherwise, that's just complete speculation, because we can consider this like a gift or institutional money getting in, because we know we have things like futures, we have hedge funds and everything getting into the market overall. So we can look at this more so as a gift and really just use it to chart, because if we are seeing the breakout in Q4 going into Q1 of next year, this is absolutely a gift, because we know where there's lots of pools of liquidity. We don't necessarily have to go back 4 years. So if you are, especially for traders, and I know this for a fact, if they're looking to, let's say we go into Q4, Q1, and then we start going up and retesting some of these levels here, this recent data, it's heaven sent, right? Because you don't have to go back 4 years and say, okay, what did Doge do at these price points? What did Bitcoin do at these price points? Where are the pools of liquidity? Where are my entries, my exits? You have something this year, a few months ago, that you can use for reference on entries and exits. So this is going to be a dream for a lot of investors here, that you got some recent data here of the pools of liquidity versus going back to 2020, 2021 to see how these coins are going to respond based off of fib levels, where they are, pools of liquidity, EMAs, whatever you're using to chart. You have a lot more recent data here. For me, I believe that I haven't adjusted any of the numbers until we get to Q4, Q1, and we start seeing the price action of how these coins are going to behave and what's going on overall in the economy. Yes, this is an election year. I get it. That's also an anomaly here, because that's we have some interesting things going on in the country. We have the inflation points coming down, perhaps easing up interest rates. A lot of things going on in the macro that's going to play a part here overall in the market. And then we also have to take into account that what we're seeing now is we are entering September, which is historically a sell-off month in the stock market. In crypto, this is not typically a bullish month across the board. So all of those facts have to kind of be considered when you're looking at whether or not Doge is still capable of hitting $1. People like to look at an historic red month across the board and use that as a metric to say whether or not a coin is alive and the potential of an overall asset. So until we start trending through some of those time frames historically, I'm not willing to rule out that any of those projections, whether that be Doge at $1 or BTC at 100K, until we start going through some of those later time frames and there's some adjustments in behavior and liquidity coming into the market. So with that being said, I made a video yesterday. We're talking about good prices here, where the pools of liquidity have historically been, and we're seeing this still hold up true today. We've had today we may close, looks like we're going to close green. So I say it's a high probability that we're going to have 3 green days in a row. And leading from this pool of liquidity, this has been a pool of liquidity for Doge, I want to say since March, really. If you look at all of the wicks here and the great push-ups that we've had, this has been a battleground, and really a lot of money starts to come in below 10 cents. It gets the psychological aspect of it being a steal, and that typically pushes it back up into double digits. It doesn't hang out. Since this run happened back in late February, it does not like to hang out in single digits. So if you're able to catch it there, it's typically a good buy. That's something that we talked about in yesterday's video. I want to point this out for Bitcoin. Sorry, Coinbase. No, what is that? Is it Bitstamp that I have? Yeah, okay. We use Bitstamp. Similar price action here. Almost charting identical. You guys know how they like to mirror the liquidity coming into the market. When we have this below that, we were talking about like that 55 mark, we typically get a lot of liquidity coming into the actual coin here. So anything below this top level of fib here, we typically see funds come into this area. And even if you go back to February, March, we had some few retests in here, but when it was ready to break, we saw a huge candle and it literally just ran through this level here. So there's a lot of funds sitting here for the coin to actually rebound. Now, if you're able to catch it down here, especially in the 40s, based off of this current cycle, obviously that's going to be a great entry point and very telling. But where we are now, this is still holding up. So that's very telling for the projections and the value based off of supply and demand for investors. They believe that this is still a great deal. If you're coupling that with your projections for if you have projections of us still being bullish in Q4 going into Q1, you're seeing evidence here of people still taking that stance, right? Once this starts to lose confidence, you'll see that reflect across the market. And then you'll see Bitcoin start to retest some of these levels here down to the lower 50 range. And then at that point, you can start talking about, okay, there's a retracement, or maybe Doge isn't going to hit $1 or Bitcoin isn't going to go into six figures. Because as long as there's a battle zone here at this top level of fib, this is still maintaining a lot of the liquidity that was in the market here for that speculation to break higher, right? As long as this battle is going on in this zone, we can't start pushing narratives of a retracement here, especially if we're out of the window of the historic run and we're still maintaining a lot of the liquidity that came into the market on this initial run up, especially for the market leader coin, right? We came from around 42, low 40s really, on this initial run up here. So before you start pushing that narrative here, we have to kind of see what levels are we maintaining and where are we in the current cycle here based off of history. And that kind of gives us an idea to allude to where big money is sitting, where that liquidity is sitting going into the market. So that's my stance here as far as for Doge still being able to go to $1. I do not believe that anything has changed here until we start to get into Q4 and we start to see some different behavior, and then we can start making those projections. But as for now, everything still stands as far as from my point of view. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to hear it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.